Okay, now Martin's back, we can start. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Okay to remain seated?
Yes,
Thank you. My name's Tony Knight. I'm the Secretary of the Poetry Ratepayers and Residents Association. This is an incorporated society which has been advocating for the environment for 60 years. And we're here, my colleague Val, the committee member, is here to present our submission in support of the prohibition of freedom camping on the Waipō Reserve.
Just a brief statement. We have some photos to support what we said in our submission that we have put in place, and then people can ask us questions. On behalf of the Portuguese Ratepayers and Residents Association, ORA, we wish to support prohibiting freedom camping in the Waipō Reserve of Portugal. ORA has presented a very detailed written submission to the hearing that you will have fully read. We reiterate today again that there are 4 protective safeguards that must be considered in prohibiting freedom camping at Waipō Reserve. 1, protection under Te Reti o Waitangi. 2, protection of the environment. 3, protection of access to as many people in the community as possible. And 4, protection of the safety of all. TCDC has a duty of care of this environment, rating Waipō Reserve at Portugal 13 out of 15 indicates that prohibition of freedom camping is going to be the best long-term protection for the reserve. ORA acknowledges and endorses this proposal. ORA is one group that are kaitiaki of this unique environmental autonomy. We cannot now allow a small group of campers be given 48-hour priority parking or longer when the reserve parking needs to be for all who would wish to be part of protecting and accessing this much loved environment. Today is a perfect time to safeguard Waipō Reserve for future generations. Can I please hand up the photos? We've got 7 copies. So that's some idea. This is just indicative of what I see every time, 1,500 times that I have visited most mornings at the reserve. With all respect to the Freedom Camping Rangers do an incredible job. It's after hours, and when people come and go, people come and go knowing that you're not there. But it's not a criticism of the people doing the work. It'll just give you some idea of what I see on a regular basis. Large vehicles, taking over multiple sites, people down there that are not supposed to be there. It's disrespectful to the actual reserve. Thank you.
so we're going to any more submission?
Yes,
Questions? Any questions? Everyone happy? Thank you very much.
I put my hand up for that.
Oh, I didn't see you, sorry.
So with all these problems, have you seen any enforcement of
yes, absolutely.
what happens?
But they're not there all the time. So they've been very, very regularly. The people are very diligent in the work. But there's the weight of numbers. I can go down there and there's 26 people freedom camping.
That many?
Oh, yes. And I've got documentation for 5 years that I can present. I've only just brought you just a snapshot. So they hide, they come after hours, these people are doing a good job. But it's not enough to protect this area.
So can I just one quick one,
Yeah.
sorry?
Yeah.
So if it's prohibited there, how are you going to stop campers coming?
Today on the table is what we categorise it as.
Yeah.
That's what is on the table.
Yeah.
That's what we're speaking to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. There are options. There's education. There's other places they.
Could we go to other places? I'm saying, is there any other place that could do it?
There is a camping ground there.
In the submission, that's clearly written. I expected people to have read it.
Yeah.
That's my expectation.
But
Yeah.
the camping ground still operates, doesn't it?
As is the new adventure place, YHA.
Yeah.
There are other options, but this place, because it's under the treaty settlement, does need to be protected. It is a single one-lane track in there. And FENS have recognised in the community meeting, all in this documentation which you're supposed to have read, of it is actually a high risk fire area. And you all live on the Coromand or have connections to it, you know exactly how bad it is.
Thank you for a very good submission. Thank you. Thank you. Now we have another big thing. Eight. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking today. I sort of listened to everyone and thought what I prepared possibly doesn't, it just goes over everything again, but I'll go through it quickly. Having read through all the submissions, almost a quarter of them do not support freedom camping anywhere at Cooks Beach Reserve. In particular, the Mercury Bay Residents and Ratepayers Association, Mercury Bay Community Board, and Michelle Wilson of Naughty Tamatera have all submitted seeking the entire Cooks Beach Reserve be designated as prohibited for freedom camping. We're also aware that Fire and Emergency New Zealand have written to Council expressing their safety concerns for both proposed areas. The Reserves Act 1977 prohibits freedom camping reserves, as we all know. The Freedom Camping Act 2011 was enacted in response to the anticipated huge influx of overseas and local supporters to follow the World Rugby Cup games around New Zealand in their mobile homes, etc. It enabled people to park and sleep overnight while travelling to the next game. But freedom camping is generally recognised as the freedom to roam to desirable locations of campers' choice at a multitude of DOC, private camping and MCA sites around New Zealand. It appears, however, it's being erroneously interpreted as the right to enjoy free camping, along with the right to camp anywhere. As confirmed to me by a council officer, TCDC have no obligation under the Freedom Camping Act to provide freedom camping in reserves. Freedom camping is not a benign activity, particularly at a site where there are no immediate facilities. Indeed, many other supporters have also identified and acknowledged the huge difficulties for TCDC of regulation and enforcement across a large and dispersed area such as Thames Coromandel. With the borders now reopened and the pandemic-induced huge increase in the number of New Zealand-owned motorhomes, it's reasonable to assume the number of, and therefore the issues caused by freedom camping, will be even greater than previously. However, that increased demand for freedom camping does not override the relevant Freedom Camping Act assessment criteria being applied to reserves. It's also disingenuous to blame international freedom campers for the majority of the problems caused, since the problems experienced at Cooks Beach have continued while the borders have been closed. Some submitters are seeking substantial evidence of the impacts of freedom camping to support the prohibited designations. We consider we have more than adequately provided this evidence under the 3 assessment criteria in the Freedom Camping Act for Council to designate the entire Cooks Beach Reserve as prohibited for freedom camping. As is the case with many other reserve areas, including the settlements of Harhay and Hotwater Beach reserves. And then I've included a bit about, I walk on a daily basis through the Purangi Reserve to the beach, through the randomly parked freedom camping vehicles, and observe the continual incursions and tracks being beaten into and through the native shrubs and trees surrounding the edge of the reserve adjacent to the estuary. On hot summer days, the lingering smell of stale urine and excrement can be particularly overwhelming and unwelcome, and is a direct consequence of freedom camping having been allowed to occur here.
Thank you. Questions?
Got the message?
You've got the mission. Yeah.
Just one thing, Justice Cooper is a male, not her. I just thought I'd let you know.
I don't make assumptions.
Yes. Any other questions? Thank you for a very clear submission. Thank you. What we got next? Graham Toohey?
Yeah.
Welcome, Graham. Page 1086.
Just before I start, can I just clarify something Penelope said? She said a quarter of the submissions. What she meant was of all of the submissions, a quarter was requested, and actually 100% of them were supporting prohibition of freedom camping. So I think it's very important. Okay. So Thank you. I, and my wife and family have had a property at 56 Marine Parade for over 20 years now. Children have grown up there, and now we're about to have grandchildren grow up there. So we've seen the area develop really interestingly. Population of Cook's Beach and the people that come to that place has probably doubled, if not more, tripled over the last 20 years, and probably will continue to do so. So you've got my submission, you've read that. But what my real concern here is actually the assessment, and I don't know how the assessment came through so low. It looks like it's the big spot. It's completely inaccurate. This area is just here on the map. The council and the beach care are spending a fortune on doing the sand dunes. The area is small. It is the principal and the primary access onto the beach. It's very heavily used. Children learn to ride their bikes on Marine Parade. It's a busy road. They walk around. People let their little children in the bathroom off the beach by themselves. And right next to there, you want to go and put freedom campers who hide them behind their curtains. We don't know who they are, and it is very dangerous, right? So I think it's an inappropriate area from a safety perspective completely, as well as protecting the sand dunes, and as well as encroaching on a very public reserve. The other point being is actually where you want to put these freedom campers. Is it exactly, how many of you been to the Freedom Camping Fair? Right, have you bought a hamburger off them in the tent that they make that nice food? You know where that is? Right where you want to put freedom campers. So I suggest you go and ask Freedom Camping what they think of this idea, right? It's encroaching on public amenity. The second thing I'd like to make is actually the reserve, the bylaw, your own bylaw, the reserves access, you have to maintain complete open access to the reserve. This is a reserve heavily used by the public, and you want to block it off. And potentially, as we heard before, not only 4 will turn up, 40 of these will turn up, and they'll block access to the emergencies. And unfortunately, I've been taken away in the helicopter off that front. So, you know, if you want to be responsible as councillors for somebody's death because they can't get to the helicopter, go for it. Equally, as a responsibility of the councillors, you're there to protect and work for the community. You know, there's been indecent assaults on the beach. My son was a witness to one of those. You know, and you're putting people hiding behind curtains next to toilets, young children around there all the time. I think that's actually intensifying the volatility of the place. Right. So I actually completely am concerned about having people sleeping overnight in this area, right? And for all the other reasons. So really that's what I'm about. That's what our concerns are. And our real concerns, having lived there for 20 years and seeing a number of people go through and use that car exactly where it is. It's just completely inappropriate for people to be sleeping overnight. What's more important, 300 metres down the road in a really good place is a motor camp they can all go and use. Or maybe the council could go and lease for sites motor camp and put some freedom campers in there. Maybe, I don't know. So anyway, that's all I want to say, right? But there's, I think there'll be some tension if people start freedom camping at that spot.
Once again, very clear message here.
You raised an interesting point. You talked about the assessment or the criteria. That's something we need as the council to look at on the basis that's been approached.
If you ask me, whoever made that assessment, either went there at night time and couldn't see anything, or has never been there. There's no question. There's no question that assessment is absolutely inaccurate. I'm happy to turn up for whoever did it. I'm happy to take them away from their computer out there and point everything out. But personally, I'll take the time to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jen first. Page 856. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. This morning, I'm going to speak of the history at Hurangi Reserve as I've observed it in the last 8 years. We've owned our property in Cook's Beach since 1990. We became permanent residents in 2006. When we bought the reserve, behind us was a wilderness of bracken and blackberries with no vehicle access. Over the last 32 years, it has been cleared and made into an accessible, usable space. I have no doubt that the council fully believed that the bylaws introduced by them in 2014 would be respected by the campers, and that they had the ability to control anything that may eventuate from situating freedom camping, albeit restricted, in what is essentially a residential area. For the past 8 years, rather than living next door to a reserve with a restricted freedom camping area, we have been next to what can only be described as an unofficial, uncontrolled camping ground. It is particularly crowded over the summer, with the campers overflowing onto the boatland area, under the pines and into the barbecue area at the reserve entry. Anywhere the land is flat, every person whose property adjoins at the reserves and the boat ramp areas has been adversely affected in some way. They come in cars and tents, as well as self-contained vehicles. That little blue sticker, whether obtained legally through the certifiers or off the internet for $5, is assumed to give them permission to camp or park wherever they want to. We quickly learned that having a toilet on board does not mean it is used. In fact, we can assure you that it is not in the majority of cases. The nearest council convenience is over 200 metres away, and at night it is dark and shadowed, resulting in the surrounding area, including the tidal wetlands, being used as a toilet all year round. But the worst is in the summer, when it becomes a stinky, unsightly health hazard. From the beginning, the signage indicating the restricted area was ignored. One van owner commented to us that it didn't, at that stage, designate a single row only. So there were multiple rows, all parked neatly between the signs. A larger, more detailed sign was installed in a very prominent position. Most campers drove straight past without stopping. The few that did stop often chose to ignore it. A single row sticker was then affixed to the signs. However, maximum numbers, I think at that stage 6 to 8, had been unfortunately omitted. Then a camera was installed to survey the area, ostensibly to enable campers to check and determine if room was available at the site. Unfortunately, it didn't appear to be effective in the way it was hoped. It may, however, have saved the council officers a few trips in the quieter times. Just behind us, there are invariably upwards of 20 a night in the peak season, some nights 30 plus, and on one occasion 42. And that is the restricted freedom camping area only, does not include the boat ramp and the barbecue. There has been no obvious change in overall numbers in the last 7 summers. Even when our country was locked down, the overseas tourists were replaced by stuck-at-home Kiwis taking motorhome holidays in their own backyard. During the busiest periods, council officers come 5 or 6 times a week between 7 and 9. They educate the campers, issue warnings and the occasional infringement notice. To be fair, they have tried, some even going the extra mile to try and get some semblance of compliance from the campers. Earlier this year, a council officer arrived, hopped out of his ute, stood with his hands on his hips, viewing the surrounding vans. He shook his head, put his hands in the air and called for a backup officer to help with the numbers. I think that even they may have come to the conclusion that it has not been a successful exercise. In the draft bylaw, there was a suggestion that moving the restricted area closer to the toilets could solve the problem. I am mystified, given that signs, cameras, regular patrols, warnings and in some cases infringements have not worked, and the council is still entertaining the idea of restricting camping there. Freedom camping should be a prohibited area anywhere in Cook's Beach, as it has been in Ferry Landing, Flatsmore Bay, Hunanay, Hotwater Beach. Both the areas suggested have high traffic volume, pristine beaches, dotterel protection areas, historical and cultural sites, and health and safety concerns, and none of these appear to have been fully considered in the assessments. Thank you for your time.
Well,
Any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned in your submissions about alternative freedom camping site. You have a suggestion there.
Yep, that block at the 50 Purangi Road, we've had a look at that and that seems it could be used. Was it a consideration? Could be used.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Too good.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Slides on just check. They won't be online.
Yes, we'll take you now. Sorry, what was your name?
Denise Knudsen.
Oh, yes,
You're online, you're in person.
Not
thank
good,
you.
not good at Zooming.
Page, so we're looking at page 572. That's welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to, on behalf of my husband and I's detailed submission that you've already received. And in particular, I want to speak this morning about the area around the Central Reserve. My husband and I live at 54 Marine Parade, which is very close to the corner of the Central Reserve area and the toilet block and children's playground. From our home, we have observed campers, camper vans, vehicles, including cars, that park overnight under the trees next to the toilet block of the Central Reserve and also across the road from our home. Across the road from our home is a beachfront area. Both these areas are not Freedom Camping areas. We've also noted there's absolutely no signage at all that, apart from the little thing, where the dog poo plastic bags are, that tells people it's not a designated Freedom Camping area. So maybe that alone is something too that the council can address. In fact, the whole area of Cook's Beach really hasn't got signage that tells people about Freedom Camping. The occupants of many vehicles leave rubbish behind. We see them urinating beside their vehicles, and yet the toilet block is only a few hundred metres down the road. We also have to put up with loud, unpleasant bonbon style music playing till all hours of the night. The occupants of these vehicles have got absolutely no respect for the beauty of the area that they've chosen to park in illegally. The Thames Coromandel District Council appointee patrolling our area, no disrespect to that person, tries to move vehicles along. One particular instant, he said he wasn't prepared to approach these vehicles because he was on zone. Now, in the day and age we live in, I can totally understand that because I wouldn't be either. But another example of not policing. I understand that it is the responsibility of the local authority, with the support of the police when needed, to enforce bylaw rules. And what's already occurring outside of our property and down the Freedom Reserve, existing Freedom Camping, all the other things that people have spoken about, enforced, but it's not being enforced. The Central Reserve area is used greatly by our community in general for family activities, local sport and primary school fundraising events, recreations, sport, our emergency services, including the ambulance, the rescue helicopter, the fire brigade. It's an area that's commonly used by ratepayers. Marine Parade is also the only main access to the central area of the beach. Of major concern to us is the road itself. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with Marine Parade, but it's a very narrow road. It runs parallel with the beachfront, then it turns sharply by the toilet block and children's playground in a short distance to the intersection of Bank Street. We've got absolutely no footpaths. We do pay for footpaths in our rates, I might add, but we haven't got it. So the grass verges on all of that area is the footpath, where pedestrians, children on bikes, parents pushing a pram, mobility scooters, wheelchairs, etc., use as a footpath. The area on the map that the council is considering for the Freedom parking is going to create a major danger, because any vehicle parking there is going to have to back right out across the grass verge where everyone walks, probably almost the opposite side of the road to be able to turn and to get out. Yesterday, when I was going through the website, I note that in the TCDC Freedom Camping Statement of Proposal, recently published on your website, it states under relationship with parking restrictions, parking on,
You've got 30 seconds.
parking on or close to a corner or bend, etc., is prohibited for accident reasons. If that makes sense. The liquor ban is a concern. Anyone within a restricted area of freedom camping is exempt to it. That means they can drink. There's the playground, there's the parking area, and general public health and safety major concern. I wish to thank you for listening. It's not just about the present time, it's about the future of our community. And I just hope that common sense will prevail and there'll be no freedom camping in Cook's Beach itself.
I noted in your written submissions, you state there are inconsistencies and omissions of important site information in the assessment, and you set out the incorrect information, and you go through each of the 3 reserves in great detail, and thank you for that. And you also suggest an alternate place there could be freedom camping.
Yes, 50 Hooray.
50 Peering Road.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Very thorough. Very thorough.
Council owned land.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're getting a very clear message on Cook's Beach, aren't we?
Seems to be a
Thank you.
theme coming
Thank
through.
you. Okay, we'll move on. Philip and Wendy Lane, page 580.
Okay.
Yes, am I visible on the screen at the moment, everybody, councillors and your worship?
Yes, you are visible.
That's
Yes.
great. Thank you very much for that. Look, thanks for the chance to speak to you today. I'll be speaking on behalf of myself and my wife Wendy, but also speaking to the submission by the Southern Whangamata Residents and Ratepayers Association, which it should be a submission which is close alongside our one. Hopefully it's next page or very close by.
It is.
It's there? Okay.
Yes.
Right. Well, look, I know time's precious, and what I'll do is I'll just go through that association submission first. I don't know how much of a chance people have had to really read and absorb these written submissions beforehand, but I don't want anyone to say that I haven't represented the association's views, so I'll go through that submission now. So the association's got a membership based around the southern half of Whangamata, as you'd expect, and it's been formed to represent the views of the permanent residents and the other ratepayers living in that part of the town. A common thread amongst all the members, both permanent and the batch owners, is the appreciation for the Island View Reserve and for the access that it provides to the beach. The attributes of the reserve, it's a recreation reserve, and the main objective for those, as you know, is it's the preservation of open space and the ability of people to enjoy that. Current use of the reserve does reflect those values. It has the occasional market or beach shop gathering and a few other organised activities, as well as casual recreation. Now, the road and the areas that are available for parking down Island View Road, they make that a really popular beach access in summer and at long weekends. A huge range of people visit the beach and the reserve at Island View Road, use the car park spaces in the grassy areas. At busy times, having safe vehicle and pedestrian access around that road and that access, it's really important, but it's sometimes hard to achieve. Large vehicles taking up valuable parking space and manoeuvring around a confined road end make life very difficult and sometimes quite dangerous, particularly for pedestrian families. For additional car parking, there's been some good work done in the last couple of years between the Community Board and local residents and ratepayers to add some further parking near the end of Island View Road because it gets congested. Plans are underway for recontouring one of the grassy areas to make that easier to use as a car park. And I'll come back to this in my own personal submission. The reserve's got a very popular children's playground near to the upper sealed car park, and that'll benefit from having this additional car parking as well. And just turning over into the second page of that submission, there are also picnic tables, there are toilets and a shower available for users of the reserve and the playground and the beach, and they are all well used. The current Freedom Camping problems there at the end of Island View Road, the permanent local residents and the other regulars near the reserve, they've got the best chance to see and understand how the existing Freedom Camping arrangements at that reserve have been working out. There's currently provision for only 3 or 4 there, which turns out to be a joke. There can be up to 13 at the end of that road. They report that the congestion around the end of Island View Road during busy periods is contributed to in a major way by the occupation of most of the lower car park by camper vans and caravans and house buses. And every bit of camper van parking you have near these busy beach access areas, it reduces the ability of the local residents and the local visitors to actually access the beach and access the reserve like they're meant to be able to. And it's causing a real problem for people trying to access those areas and make the best use of that recreation reserve. And for emergency access, the location of the of Island View Road right down to the dunes, that makes it the only full access spot to the beach along the whole southern end of Whangamata, south of the Williamson Park Reserve. It's the only place you can get emergency vehicles down to the beach. Camper vans trucking up and down there and turning at the end, going in and out of parks, makes all of that emergency access really difficult.
You're at 4 minutes 30 on this submission.
And all right, we're just wrapping up on the association's submission. The criteria that have been used by the council to identify freedom camping sites, what the association suggests is that you look at what you think is going to be beneficial from having freedom camping for Whangamata and the other centres on the peninsula, and then find out what are the most appropriate places for that. And really, I think there's little doubt, freedom camping is about overnight accommodation, and then people can go and visit the various attractions around any of the towns, around any other parts of the peninsula during the daytime, either on foot or in their campers. And so you can have, and I'd suggest that the association suggests you have the freedom camping spaces where they are most likely to get a benefit from local facilities, from shops, from the supermarket, and then leave them able to travel out to the attractions during the day. And I think they've been mentioned.
I'm letting you run over into your submission now.
Yep, no, that's great. The two do come together pretty much. And so that people can camp where they want overnight.
Okay, Robin, you have a question?
Pardon?
Yeah,
Oh,
hello.
Councillor.
Yeah, so Robin Sinclair, Councillor for Thames here. I'm at home today. I just had a question because while you're talking, I can hear that there's a problem with the Island View car park. But if we prevented people from staying overnight there, as you've just said, they'd still be able to use it during the day. So it wouldn't actually solve any of the problems, would it? Unless you, or are you suggesting that we just ban them from the Island View car park during the day as well?
Well, they're a problem down there. The bylaw isn't something that's going to prevent the campers from going there during the day, but the problem is they arrive there in the late afternoon. They stay through until as much of the daytime as they possibly can. And if they are going to be based somewhere else, then you will get some of them coming here during the day. And if we make all of the car parking available for all types of vehicles, then people can share those. But at the moment and in the future, what you get is from about 3 or 4 p.m. right through until mid-morning or late morning, the campers taking up all this room. It does make a real difference that they're overnighting there. There's been no way of regulating how long they stay. With the best will in the world, the enforcement officers do not manage to move people around. We've seen them down there and people might leave for a few minutes and come back. if you locate the overnight places in locations where it really doesn't matter if they happen to stay there during the day, if they come and go a bit, keep them away from those really busy, really important access areas and recreation areas, then you leave a lot more of the car parking spaces available for the general public, for residents, for families, for visitors that aren't trying to live there overnight, to get access to the beach, to get use of the reserve. So that the overnighting doesn't just happen from 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. It's a very different thing.
I've taken that answer as part of the
Yep,
submission for
thanks.
about 8 minutes.
Pardon?
I've taken that answer as part of the submission, so you're so lengthy, so you've got another couple of minutes here.
Yep. Okay. No, that's good. Thanks. Now, and one thing that both the association and a few of the closer residents really do wish to urge on you, there's been this car park initiative that I mentioned to you earlier. There's a grassy area that's planned to be flattened out and made available for overflow parking at the busiest times. And that process, unfortunately, there's been one or two people, including a couple of the community board members, who've tried to hijack that car parking project and turn it into a camper van project. And the consultation initially with local residents made it very clear that the starting point for this is for car parking to ease congestion. And then plans got drawn up, unfortunately, that showed it as a Freedom Camping car park, quite different to what the intention of that car park is for. And to be honest, I think really it's a disgrace how that project has gone. The one thing I would urge on you above all else is don't be tempted to buy into this idea of using that new overflow car parking area for Freedom Camping. That would be the worst possible outcome you could arrive at. It's just a misuse of something which is intended to provide access to the playground, to the reserve, and to the beach. And it's really going to be a pretty much a deprivation of the rest of the community if you use it for campers. It would take up much of that area. The other submitters in the locality and who are members of the association no doubt will cover a lot of those issues. But we would urge on you to think very seriously about whether you want to dedicate places that are strongly valued public access areas for recreation reserves and for the beachfront to be occupied much of the time by often large camper vans, house buses, caravans and the like. Sure, thank you.
No questions? No questions?
I note, Mr. Lang, that you put in your submission and the South Whangamatau resident ratepayers about the need to relook at the criteria.
Yes, and I think that is important, that you need to, I suggest really with it, like with any problem of this sort, what is the objective? So what is the important aspect of Freedom Camping? And it is overnight stays. It's providing overnight accommodation for travellers. How do you best go about that? Where do you locate them? And I'd suggest that you might be looking to locate those where they get the greatest benefit. That is close to the facilities that they need to enjoy in connection with overnighting. That is close to a supermarket, close to the shops who may get the benefit from it. Okay. And if you start to look at that criteria.
I've got one more.
Yeah.
You are a lawyer. Are
That's
you
true.
aware of the government's new bill that's just come out on this?
Yes, there is a new Freedom Camping bill, which is partway through that parliamentary process. And while I haven't looked in detail at it, the whole of that bill and its contents are up for debate still, and there's still select committee meetings to go. And I'd suggest, as part of considering what the main attributes are that you want to get out of Freedom Camping, that should be done in the context of the current legislation, including that new proposed legislation. See what comes out of it. Have a good look at the criteria and the benefits of Freedom Camping, and then start to make some decisions about where they are best to be located, rather than going through a tick
Thank you
box.
very much. We must move on. Mr. Lang, thank you for your submission.
Right, thank you for the opportunity.
We're going to move now on to Warren Hunt, page 525.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present. Myself and my wife Liz, we're long-term owners at Island View, have been since the mid-1980s. Look, Island View is a very popular reserve in Whangamata, and particularly so at peak periods. In fact, I'd be fair enough to say that it would be probably the second most popular beach access area in Whangamata for families and children, due to the very safe beach, the wonderful playground that was put in by the council about 10 years ago, and it's also very popular for families and children. And in a lot of cases, you know, children and families are riding their bikes to this area and running between the playground and also the beach. I think Gary Gottlieb just made a comment about the scoring system, and that's something that I put particular emphasis on in my submission. Currently, the Island View campground area, or Freedom Campground area, is rated a very low 4 out of 15, which is somewhat surprising. We've been given a breakdown of that number by Sian Smith from the TCDC. In comparison to other, I guess, localities within Whangamata, Beach Road has a score of 9, Hunt Road 13, and Esplanade Drive 9. All of those areas, I believe, are very similar to the Island View Reserve. And if you're not familiar with that scoring system, if it receives a 9, then it's not appropriate for freedom camping and is considered prohibited. We are requesting, Liz and myself, and also the Ratepayers Association, that the TCDC revise and review the scoring system for Island View. We believe it should be an absolute minimum of 9. For example, protection and health of the safety of people visiting the area, the council have given that a 1 out of 5. Clearly, that is inappropriate for this area. You've got a playground there, you've got young children walking around, you've got elderly people, because it is a very safe access beach as well. So that just does not seem appropriate. And it's fair to say that the Island View Reserve car park area has become increasingly popular over the last 10 years. And that's actually about the time that this area was designated as a freedom camping area. So we're asking that be revised in line with the other areas within Whangamata. I guess the other area we are struggling with is why the TCDC have allocated this area for freedom camping. Look, it's got probably some of the best views of any freedom campground in New Zealand, and we sort of can't understand that when you've got ratepayers paying 15 to 20 grand a year for rates to have those views. And as Phil Lang just mentioned, a more appropriate area would be in town, where the freedom campers can park up and spend their tourist dollar. I concur with Phil's comments at Island View access for vehicles. That's the only beach access for vehicles for the South Whangamata. So in the event of emergencies, that's the only area that emergency vehicles can actually get onto the beach. At peak periods, that camper van area is full of camper vans. And in fact, I put photos into my submission, and I think if you have a look at those, there are probably on most days, anywhere between 10 to 15 camper vans. Around New Year's Eve, I've counted up to 25 camper vans. I just think the mix of that area with the playground, all the children that are there and the families is just not appropriate. I have personally seen people showering naked there, they're cooking food there, they leave their rubbish behind. I've seen, dare I say it, sexual activities occurring in the back of camper vans, and it's the mix with that and young children is just not appropriate, and that should be taken into account in the revised scoring system. So in summary, we ask that the scoring system be revised. It's not a suitable area. And I just make this comment, under the Reserves Act 1977.
I'm a bit slow. I should have told you 10 seconds ago. You got 30 seconds.
Okay, 30, good on you. That recreation reserves are there for the physical welfare and enjoyment, and this is out of the Act, quote unquote, physical welfare and enjoyment of the public, for the protection of the natural environment and the beauty of the countryside, with an emphasis on retention of open spaces and on outdoor recreation activities. That is what the reserve is for, and that's what it should be maintained as, and it shouldn't be a campground.
Okay, I'm going to ask the questions now. Anyone got the...
Well, I'm just, I'm looking at your photographs of page 531.
Yes.
533, and I just think probably we all can look at those again.
Yeah.
I know, but it's just that I'm lucky I've got hard copy, so.
Yeah, we've all got them here. We've got them all.
Okay, well, that's good.
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to now move on to John Hall.
John Hall, yeah, he's online.
He's online.
Yeah.
Page 490.
John Hall, you are now available to speak.
Has that come through now?
Yep. You're there.
Yes.
Who we got, sorry?
Okay. Hey, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I will be brief now, having heard both Phil and Warren, who've covered many of the key points that I wish to raise. One additional one, which I've taken particular note of, is that the bylaw is really reliant on a condition that Freedom Camping vans be certified and self-contained. This simply means that, you know, that the vehicle has got its own water and ablutionary and sanitary needs for a minimum of 3 days. And I guess it is interesting when you read some of the reviews on the web, when people are putting their views on the area at Island View, some of the comments say the spot is awesome. There are public toilets and even a bench shower and beaches. A second comment says, this is a great place to stay and it's nice to have toilets close by. So I guess for me, there's that doesn't sort of gel with the bit that the vehicle needs to be fully self-contained. And my concern is that if this area continues and dare I say it was to even expand, there's potential not only to start from a small area to park camper vans, but basically to set up a campground if we're providing toilets and showers. So that's my one point there. The second point is we do have a shoreline management plan, and admittedly it's a work in progress document, but I think we all need to take note of what it's saying and what it's indicating to us, not only for now, but for future planning. And my involvement in Whangamata, dare I say it, has been greater than 60 years. And while I've been a property owner for 30 plus years, I've had a long time and had a lot of association, not only with Whangamata itself, but in particular this reserve. And so I guess we need to think about what's it going to look like in 50 years' time and 100 years' time. Finally, I fully endorse the request to have the area reassessed. I fully support the numbers and the comments that both Phil and Warren have put forward, because fundamentally, when the first assessment was done back in 2011, it is now 11 years later and things have significantly changed, and we would be blind if we didn't acknowledge that. So those are my key points I wish to add, and I'd like these points to be taken seriously and happy to be involved in future planning going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions?
No, let's do it. Yep.
Any questions? Anyone online? Questions? No. Thank you very much for your submission. I think it reinforces what we've heard today, and we understand very clearly. Thank you. Okay, have we got everyone? No.
I guess they're just trying to ring.
Okay, so we'll move on to Paul Cook.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, Paul Cook, page 258 and 268. Paul, are you going to do these together?
You're on mute, Paul.
All right, is that better?
Paul, I'll take we're going to do these together. I'll give you 9.5 minutes and I'll tell you when you've got 30 seconds to go.
Okay, I hopefully won't need 9.5 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. Look, thanks for the opportunity to present, everybody. Much appreciated. There's obviously been a lot of history around freedom camping in Apito Bay over the last 10 years or so. And I think I'd like to start just by reminding everyone of the analysis that the TCDC staff carried out in 2014 of freedom camping, at which time they recommended prohibition at Apito Bay and all the associated reserves, with the overall reason being to protect the health and safety of residents and visitors. So that was the analysis they carried out in 2014. They specifically noted issues on dune erosion, on wildlife, dotterels and oyster catchers. They referenced the incredibly steep access to getting to the bay, and also referenced the limited vehicular access to reserves. So look, our view obviously is that all of these criteria apply in 2022. And we believe there has been a lot of work, a lot of discussion between the residents, the ratepayers and TCDC staff very constructively back in 2014, 2015, when this issue was last looked at. And we don't believe anything's changed to modify the previous position, which was prohibition throughout the bay. Coming on to the current review, I think our view is that the scoring which has been applied to the ONR Drive site is flawed. And as per our submission, we looked at two of the criteria that we use for scoring. In terms of access, there's no formed driveway. The area is subject to flooding, and I don't want to exaggerate that. It gets very wet when there's rain, and there's certainly been evidence of surface flooding with rainfall previously. And the area is currently designated as a trailer park. And while it doesn't have extensive use as a trailer park, we believe that that's likely to change as increasing number of homes arising out of the sand subdivision come on stream, and the parking currently used on the beach is like full. So we think that reserve will actually start to function as a trailer park, which we see as incompatible with freedom camping. Equally importantly, in terms of health and safety, it's our view that the same issues which have previously been identified imply, and really these are around the impossibility of enforcing restrictions. And with the best will in the world, we have been here before. There is no way that the enforcement officers are going to be able to make regular visits over the Blackjack Road to Apito. And when there have been people reported for camping, for violations of restrictions, it's been impossible to send them back over the Blackjack Road. We have had specific instances of the enforcement officer coming over after 6 o'clock and coming across freedom campers who've had a few drinks and are simply not going to be sent back up. We believe there's an excessive impact on neighbouring properties, which are right next to the reserve. And again, going back to what we've witnessed before, and look, I know that there's the vast majority of people, or a significant majority of people doing freedom camping are law-abiding, respectful citizens who use their facilities properly. But there are others as well, and you know, we have suffered from the behaviour of others in terms of both vandalism, of altercations with local people. And even I understand the requirement for self-contained vehicles. In our experience, frequently the self-contained vehicles or the facilities on the self-contained vehicles are not actually used, and we have encountered significant fouling around the beach areas. So I think our principal point really is we don't believe the restrictions can be enforced. We don't think it's an appropriate area. We do respectfully request that the prohibition, which has been in place for several years after the last round of exhaustive investigation and discussion took place, remain as they have been.
Thank you, Paul. Is that the end of vote submissions?
Sorry, you're not very clear. I didn't hear.
Is that the end of vote submissions? Your personal submission and the ratepayer submission?
Yeah, that's for both submissions.
Thank you.
I noted on page 261, and you mentioned this at the end, you talked about the significant prior work and communications on this issue, taken into consideration that the community has well documented views, acknowledged and respected the status quo, we believe, been in place since 2015, prohibiting freedom camping at the bay is properly enacted and enforced. I'm still looking to see that previous, as a councillor, I haven't seen that information and I'm still waiting to get it.
I did provide it to council staff and asked for it to be circulated.
It's there, it's been enacted. It's been there since that time. And you'll get it.
I've gone on the site and I can't find it. Anyhow, at page 278 and 279, are they your photographs? So there's a photograph of grey water disposal, and then there's another one at 279 with no heading, with a big long van, a camper van.
No, I'm sorry, those aren't my photographs.
They're not yours?
They're not mine.
Okay, because I thought they looked like a whanga matata to me, but I could be wrong.
On the first point, when we were first notified that this review was underway, I did pass copies of we prepared a paper, quite a significant paper, which I passed to the council staff and asked for it to be provided to the deliberations for the council.
Yeah,
I'm happy to provide that paper again if it's.
We've got it. We're good.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, we're good.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Eric Carter. Welcome, Eric.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen.
Page 229.
Where do we need to go? There, just up to here. My submission to you guys on the freedom camping is not really site specific. It's a broad stroke of the whole thing. The word freedom has been abused long enough by people using the Coromandel as a place with no fixed abode. We have 3 or 4 just continuously going around and camping. They can't be self-contained. And there's a cheap holiday rolling in from camper vans to the value of $1,000 to $400,000. You know, some of these camper vans are the same price as holiday homes or people's homes within the coal of Coromandel. The word freedom, I believe, promotes a sense of low or no value. I would like to see the name changed to self-contained camping, because that's what it effectively needs to be, is self-contained camping. We just had some speakers before me. I've been sitting there talking about people using public toilets and facilities, and that if you want to be here self-contained, use what you bring. It's finally, as a ratepayers are charged on, as we as ratepayers are charged on top of our rates to use the council facilities such as swimming pools and boat ramps, etc. We should be looking at charging these self-contained campers. Now, I know this might, you might have heard it 10 times this morning, or you might not have, and that we have the technology, much like we do with the boat ramps now in Coromandel, where you can go on the app and book yourself a launching the next day or become a member. But we need to get some money back. they're using our toilets, they're using reserve spaces. These people, they are taking up the best views in town. The other day I drove down my road at Bennett Road, straight out, there's a camper van that should have gone to the rust bucket collection with a set of knickers and grass on the strings of the tree. They weren't even in the proposed site. I'm paying $2,500 a year rent. I go to the boat ramp, I pay $30 at City Angle or Council boat ramp. These people can come onto the peninsula, they can go to an app, how many nights you're staying or your duration, where your program is going to be. $10 a night, that's just a number I've got in my head because there's not a lot of room in here at the moment. But $10 a night, stay 10 nights, it's $100. It's still cheap accommodation, but we can put that to the reserve, Parks and Reserves Fund. We can do up toilets, we can do up reserves, and we can do stuff in the community with that. These people, they come on my boat. I used to, I own a charter boat, or 2 charter boats now, but I would have the Waikato Motorhome Association come and on not Labor weekend, Queen's birthday weekend, I think it is, and they would spend 3 days and they would come fishing twice. The first question they asked me was, what's the discount? They go to the pub for the tea, what's the discount? They go to the camping grounds, what's the discount? These people are not bringing a great amount of wealth into our district. Some of them, you know, they swap the pots of jam and pickle. I'm not putting down, they're lovely people. My own relations, Freedom Camp, or self-contained camp as I like to be called. But what I'm saying to everybody is there is a cost of coming to this beautiful area. We talked the other day somewhere with our councillors, and we're paying 15% higher rates than anywhere else in New Zealand, we're told. And we're the 3rd poorest district. Now, I know that sounded like my mayoral speech the other day, guys, but it's a fact. And this is one way out of that decline, is by lifting ourselves up, not letting people drag us down, by getting a little bit of money off them. It's cohorts, it's not massive amounts. So that's my heartfelt plea to the council and to the people here today, is that we must look at a charge on it. It's not a free go anymore. Thank you very much. Any questions, I suppose, mate? Well, within the 5.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Sorry. Sandra?
Oh, is he gone?
No, I'm right here.
I just wonder if we shouldn't be doubling or tripling the fines.
No, Sandra, I don't think fining, I don't believe fining is the way. Like, that's after the event. Let's get it out there. But we can also, on that app, where those people are logging in to go, we can show them on a tourism. I'm all for tourism in the Coromandel, and you've seen that in my mayoral speech thing. Look, we can have it on
It's okay. You've answered the question. So, you know, suggesting crushing is not in order then, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd love to have a debate with you one day.
Oh, let's go.
Thank you for the things you just raised. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. I'm going up with the question.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
People would?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you, mate.
Thank you for your time. For the short time I've been here, I'm hearing a lot of people speak. So thank you. I've made notes, and if I could just read to that, that would be appreciated. I wish to submit that the Island View Reserve is unsuitable for freedom camping. I live in Island View Road and is very busy with pedestrian traffic access to the beach. The car park area is at the end of the road. Vehicles exiting the car park must make a 3-point turn to exit the car park. I would also point out that there's a children's playground right next to the car park. There is no footpath, and pedestrians need to cross the car park to access the beach. If they try to access the beach on the north side of the car park, then they could avoid crossing the car park. This area is occupied by the kayak business. Pedestrian traffic, children's playground, and kayak hire business, vehicles in the car park area needing to execute a 3-point turn to exit the area. I don't agree with the council's assessment that health and safety is a 1, when Esplanade Drive and Hunt Road are rated 5 and 3 respectively. The health and safety aspect of the car park is compounded by the numerous camper vans frequenting the car park. We can see Island View Road, and the camper vans driving down the road looking for the site is continuous. The beachfront location
makes the camper van sites extremely popular, resulting in the sites being continuously occupied. The bylaw requires that vehicles and people must leave by 9 a.m. to ensure that areas are accessible during the day for other users. This does not work in practice on the popular beachfront because as the van leaves, another one arrives to secure their beachfront site overnight. Even though the sites are full, there's a continuous stream of vans looking for an overnight camper van park and having to exit the car park. Whilst there seems to be checks on the vans in the morning, the number of vans frequently exceed 4. I often count 6+ vehicles staying overnight and taking all of the car parks. It now seems to be popular for caravans to occupy the sites, which have a tow vehicle taking another car park. Tenting in the scrub area over the busy time is also an issue. So using the council's scoring system, I would expect health and safety and access categories to be consistent with Esplanade Drive and Hunt Road, where they are rated 5 and 3 respectively. In fact, I would suggest the amount of pedestrian traffic using the road, car park, pedestrian area occupied by the kayak business, proximity of the children's playground, vehicles having to make a 3-point turn to exit the area, score should be 5. Also question why Island View area category is score 1. I don't see how a sealed car park, which we have in the Esplanade and Hunt Road, can be allocated a score of 3, being some concerns regarding significant sites. Once an area is sealed, what difference does a vehicle or camper van parking make? Shouldn't the areas be scored consistently if they're a sealed car park? Therefore, I believe Island View should also be allocated a score of at least 9. Freedom camping should also be prohibited for the reasons stated on the Esplanade analysis, being that this is a popular beach access area and this is a popular beach access towards area. Apart from the access and health and safety aspects, the campus van sites take up the majority of the car park area and yet are continuously occupied. The dedicated camper van sites restrict other users and prefer one group over other users. With the growth of Maungata, there are numerous ratepayers, families that need to park near the beach but can't get a car park in these continuously occupied spaces. Freedom camping is an intensive activity, and the variability of the vans, configurations and types of freedom campers means that there is a cohort of freedom campers who live in poorly configured or non-compliant vans. Those poorly configured vehicles result in cooking being undertaken in open areas at the back of the vans, as well as clothes being washed and dried in public spaces. This is then no different to a camping ground. It is unlikely a camping ground will be established on the beachfront reserve or close to a residential area without consultation. Okay, there are better sites. There are better suited areas along the town for freedom camping. One area that springs to mind is the boat launching ramp car park, where people park and park their boat trailers. There is plenty of space in this location with toilets available, and the car park is not under pressure overnight. Summary, I believe Island View Road is not appropriate freedom camping area for health and safety and access risks.
That's all good, thank you. Got the message, good. Thank you very much. We're getting the message clear.
Well, I hadn't seen the other submissions, so it's a bit cool.
Kevin Buchanan. Page 160.
Kevin Buchanan, first off, I'm not hearing any aspect of AA whatsoever. Very clear. It's my own personal submission, nothing to do with Automobile Association.
60.
So in addition to my written submission, which is in favour of extending freedom camping sites for motorhomes throughout the TCDC district, I support both extending the number of sites and also the number of motorhomes allowed at specific sites. However, I do believe it should be limited also to a number of reasons. We don't want 2 caravans being near 100 people trying to stay overnight. So the points I'm trying to make here is, first one is, I think we need to change the narrative on Freedom Camping a little bit. There's a lot of negativity in the community. I think people have just got their knickers twisted, so to speak. I want to see motorhome visitors added as additional security to an area. And how do we do this? We do this by increasing the number of motorhomes that are allowed to stay outside overnight. So instead of 2 or 3, if space permits it safely, let's allow up to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. People in numbers are going to feel more secure. It's also going to mean a lot more security for the area. A lot of times I feel, and I've seen it, where freedom campers are being blamed for mess, graffiti and stuff. And I'm looking around this room and I'm thinking the average age in here is probably around about me. I've just turned 60. Most of our freedom camper motorhome people are in their 50s and 60s. Not the age group and sort of people that are probably going to go around doing graffiti and popping in the bushes and everything. So let's welcome those people onto the peninsula. The second, the next point I want to put in here is that by now I'm using the word motorhomes a lot as opposed to freedom campers. I'm aware there is a law change coming out, I think about February or March next year, whereby motorhomes are going to be required to have their toilets fixed in the vehicle. So not these potty type vehicle van things that probably are behind a lot of people putting in bushes, etc. So I don't know, not a law thinking type person, some of you may have an idea. I'm thinking, is there an opportunity here for TCDC to limit the size vehicle or the types of vehicles that are being used for freedom camping around the peninsula? So getting rid of the juicy vans, so they are forced to use a campground. Allowing people in larger vehicles whose toilets will be required to be fixed in the vehicle, the ones that can use the size. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. And going back again to the number of sites we have allocated, the number of allocations at each site, having that number increased. Let's face it, people like our age are not the sort, I don't believe, who are going to mess the area. And if something does go down, we're going to be pretty quick on the phone with the police. Far quicker than a security person can get there when somebody rings council and then they ring the security person and they've got to drive from wherever. We've got people spending money on the peninsula. They can be our security people. The very last one on here is, again, when it comes to putting the bushes, more public toilets. I think is probably what we should also look towards. Having been a member of the public who's gone on day trips around the peninsula, every now and again we get caught short. We've got young children and they get caught short and there's no toilet. It's going to be second bush on the left here. That's going to happen every time. When I first moved to the Coromandel 14 odd years ago, I spent the first 4 years driving trucks and trailers around the peninsula. Try and find parking near a toilet with a truck and trailer during the day. Just ain't there. If you've got to go, you've got to pull over at a lay-by and down through the bushes. You've got no option. So it's unfair to try and load all responsibility onto freedom campers. I think what we need to do is build some toilets, and the other thing is encourage the right type of freedom campers on the peninsula. People with money who want to spend and who aren't going to leave a deposit lying around in the bushes. So that's yeah.
I just got one, yeah. So the Tourist Infrastructure Funds supported this Coromandel area with a couple of $1 million of toilet upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a lot of that. Would you support, if you were supporting more camper wagons in the same area, an area out of town as opposed to into town? How do you see that?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably both. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I don't own a camper van as such at the moment, but we're saving very hard for one, and we'll probably have one within the next year. And we've sort of looked at, we might stay over at Whirianga one night. We might decide to stay up the coast one night. That's just using the Coromandel, but other areas of New Zealand as well. So yeah, in town and out of town, I suppose, I'd be, yeah, a bit each way.
I've got a question. Are you aware of the cost of public toilets at the TCDC? And are you aware that outside Doctor Auckland City, TCDC has about the third number of highest public toilets in the country?
No, it wasn't, but I am now, and thank you for that, because actually, yeah, that is, I mean, that is huge cost. Got to be a consideration, of course.
Huge cost for the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
I note on page 163, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this more specifically set out any other comments. This is an extremely difficult proposal to follow and complete. Specific localities and locations, many of which are not even known to Google Maps.
Yes.
And one would have to say that you point out a valid
Yes,
point.
it was. I didn't want to come along and complain about the process today, but you brought it up. But someone did email me with a more specific list of sites and exactly where they are. But yeah, when you go and put it into Google, Google's going, no such place. Well, how are we supposed to fill out a submission if we don't know exactly where it is we're pointing out? I mean, there are some sites on there that I disagree should be sites for camping, freedom camping, and the others I think should be included in there. But it was very, very difficult to find that. So thank you to us that sent that information afterwards.
Any other questions?
I just wondered for your edification, the new bill that the government's proposing is not going to refer to camper vans. It's going to refer to motor vehicles, whether they be self-contained or non-self-contained. So they'll be referred to as motor vehicles.
Oh, rightio. Cool, thank you. Yeah, I never see somewhere on, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all. All right.
Now I'm going to take Graham Leach. We'll take you now, if that's all right.
Oh, yes, I can do it.
Can you do that now? Page 596, because we're running a little bit ahead of time. And you were here, so.
I was just expecting to see how you people operate. And I'm not totally prepared, so just.
Well, if we can do another one while you're prepared. Would you like another 5 minutes?
If you can do another one, that'd be
Okay,
great.
we'll do some more.
Bits of paper.
So that's page 158, is work.
Warren, we're going to take your submission now, if you can hear us.
He's here. I saw him come up. Yeah, coming. Where's he on the list? Oh, it's me. They put my name down. It's not.
So that is
Under Terry Walker.
Yeah, where are you there?
Warren.
He's coming. Just eating his lunch. Okay.
Give up, I'm ready.
All right, okay, we'll take you. No, he can wait, we'll take you.
We go back a long way. We used to play water polo together.
I am a white cat.
Welcome, Graham.
Thank you for the opportunity to come today. I'm Graham Leach, as you probably all know. I don't know whether you've got my submission.
Yes.
You have it?
Yep.
Okay. And have you read all these submissions? Because it must be a hell of a job.
Hell of a job.
Whether we can remember them is a different story.
Right. We've owned a property at 55 Marine Parade, Cook Beach, for over 60 years this year, and haven't we seen a lot of change in that period? I'm here today because I'm passionate about.
I can sit down if people come.
I feel better, right? No, I can punch people better than that. I'm passionate about Cook's Beach. I say our Cook's Beach. And I want to see good rules set for freedom camping for now and into the future. I'm sure that's what you're trying to do. We're privileged actually to have a property which is 4 houses from the boat ramp in the centre of the beach and public toilets. An area
where you're proposing, or the proposal is to have 4 freedom camping sites and next to the reserve. I apologise that my written submission is mostly a copy of others because I did not know anything about this freedom camping bylaw project until just over a week ago, when I was informed by another Cooks Beach property owner who likewise had been told by another Cooks Beach property owner. I was astounded to find that the proposed new bylaw was to create 4 new freedom camping sites at one of the busiest sites on the beach. I'm sure most people have emphasised that point. I've tried to find out why, as a property owner and ratepayer, did not about it directly. Last Monday, I rang TCBC office and probably spoke to somebody here, I don't know, but hoping to get an answer to this. And I got one yesterday at 2 o'clock. So I haven't really had a lot of time to, but basically it says that, you know, ratepayers didn't get notices. And I felt that, am I wrong in this? Because here I'm told that information about this proposal for a new freedom camping bylaw was provided to people, organisations and communities by several different methods. There were banners and news items on the homepage of the council's website, email to the council's subscriber database, emails to people who had made submissions on the review of the previous freedom camping bylaw, which I think probably lasted 10 years, was it, or something like that?
Back in December. Back in December last year.
Yeah, it was quite a long time. So what I'm saying is those sort of notices, quite frankly, don't give people who are busy and doing things, and we don't look at council sites all the time. In fact, we only just looked it up yesterday. You advertised in our Coromandel, whatever that is I guess it's a publication that comes out. I don't get it. I'm not really normally interested, and media releases. So I felt a little let down by that. And I don't understand why, say, all ratepayers don't get a copy of such an important issue, if you like. You know how to send rate demands to us. Why can't you have issues like this sent to us as well that way? I think it would be cheaper for you too to get them out, and they would at least go to everybody who matters.
About 30 seconds left.
Cool. Okay. So here are some of the reasons I submit this is not a place to create 4 freedom camping sites in the centre of Cooks Beach, right next door to the public toilets. These proposed sites have one boundary, which is on the roadway, which is a very busy section of road, and I've heard other people mention that same thing, so I won't go on about that. You know, we get tractors, cars, boats, trailers queuing up on that section of the road. And at the end of the day, the same thing happens again. Not long to go. Now, we also get trucks waiting there to deliver building materials. We get
Gary, I have a question.
even thrown out. Look, I haven't got too much. But we even get, you know, the sea legs coming in delivering groceries that come into that area. So this is just not a safe site to have people camping beside the section of the road.
Yeah, that's why.
That's the point I'm saying.
Gary, did you have a question?
Yeah.
And I'd hate.
Gary, I've got a question to ask.
Well, no, he's asked a little bit. Yeah.
No, it's 5 minutes, so I'm having questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
I've got to be fair to everyone.
So I appreciate your concerns, obviously.
do you support the opportunity to go to 50 Parangi Road and put it out of the town as an option, as another option, as opposed to, or are you totally against anything in town?
No, I think I've had a good talk to my son about these sort of things because he's done freedom camping in Europe.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. He said, "Oh, you're against freedom camping?" I said, "No, I am where it's proposed because of all the things you've heard about." But he said over there they freedom camped a lot. This is when he was younger, and he said we were very well behaved because we were doing the wrong things and we did dinged if we got caught. So I think. I'm not against it at all. I think in the right place, and there is a proposal in my submission about using the dog.
Martin, you had a question?
Yeah, so just looking at the map on that corner where Marine Parade comes along and then ends up in Bank Street, and there's a toilet block on that corner. Are there, and it's a narrow road. Are there currently issues with vehicles going in and out of that toilet block?
That was one of the things I can't get out because I've been stuck for time. But basically, that is a high-speed corner for lots of people. People accelerate and go along Marine Parade way too fast. And if you're on a bike like I often am going to the shop or something like that, I keep well out of their way. I don't go on the road, actually. I go on the grass verge.
Okay, thank you.
So it is a high-speed area.
Graham, you raise a very valid point about consultation. One of the requirements for any situation is to have adequate consultation and opportunity. And I'm glad you raised that point. That's something that greatly concerns me in this process and this particular bylaw. So thank you for raising it.
Can I just make another point?
Very, very good.
Have you heard about the fire we had in the middle of the road at Cook's Beach? I was there. I was trying to get somebody. I didn't treat it as a 111 when it started because he was this mob lighting the fire on the road on that corner. And I tried to ring police stations and what have you. I didn't want to ring 111 because I didn't think it was an emergency. In the end, I had no option but to ring 111. And I was disappointed that the volunteer fire brigade obviously were the ones that had to sort this shambles out. It was right out of control.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Move on to
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you for your submission.
Hi, Warren.
Can you?
Yes, we can see you.
Yeah.
You've just muted yourself, so we cannot hear you.
What about now?
You're good.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Good afternoon, Murray and council. Mine's short and brief. Tairua Parliamentary Community Board supports most of the proposed Freedom Camping Bylaw, except for the proposed 3 parks at the Pleasant Point Reserve at Parliamentary. There has been considerable pushback from concerned residents and ratepayers, mainly because of the congestion in this area at peak times. This reserve has become very, very popular with families, especially over the summer times. Our board also wishes to acknowledge the concerns of freedom camping at Tikaro or Sailor's Grave Beach. This area is a pristine place, very popular with day visitors and tourists and the like. Because of its remoteness, residents are concerned about how this area can be satisfactorily policed. And one more thing, Murray, when my wife and I moved here to Tairua some years ago now, there were 5 camping grounds here in Tairua. We've got just 1 left, and that's about a third of what it is or was. And this only came about by the time we purchased by council. Otherwise, this site too would have been subdivided. I have no doubt that the closing and redevelopment of many former campgrounds throughout the peninsula has exacerbated the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Very good. Thank you. Any questions? Because the point has been well made on that. Yes. Any questions? Being no questions, thank you, Warren.
Thank you. I'll go and have some lunch.
Sorry?
I'll go and have some lunch.
So will we. We're going to adjourn now.
Good on you.
Thanks, Warren.
You will do the call. Ken, are you there?
I can't see him up there. Where is he? Okay.
Kingsley will get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
It's coming on.
Yeah.
Hi, Ken, we can hear you, but we can't see.
You can hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
You probably don't want to see me, but now I'm on.
You said that, not us.
Okay, well, good afternoon now, is it? Yes. So, just firstly like to point out that this is my personal submission. It is not a submission on behalf of the board, so this is just all my words. And I generally support what's proposed in the bylaw. I just want to make a few points. Firstly, I support the retention of existing Freedom Camping sites in Whangamata. And picking up a bit on what Warwick said, we used to have 3 camping grounds in Whangamata. We've had 2 closed, and the third one is up for redevelopment, so we'll soon have none in town. And so this makes Freedom Camping even more important for the economic benefit of the community and allow a place for people to come and visit. I also support the 3 new spaces mentioned for Williamson Park, and I suggest that they would be best by the barbecue, which is closest to the surf club. If they're along the right-hand side of that barbecue area, there'd be room on the left-hand side for cars to park, and so the public could use the barbecue without the Freedom Camping impinging on it. The other point I want to make, which is something I don't think I've heard anyone else mentioning, is the 2-night maximum. Now, I think 2 nights is a good limit because spaces are in short supply and they need to be rationed. But what I question is the requirement to ask motorhomes to leave during the day between nights 1 and 2. Most motorhomes, as you know, arrive late in the afternoon. So by the time they pull up, it's starting to get dark if it's this time of the year. And so day 2 is when they're most likely to do activities in town, spend money, visit the shops, go kayaking, golfing, etc. And to ask them to move on that day 2, to then go back at night, seems to be a little bit pointless because all they'll do is move 50 metres down the road. So what have you actually achieved by asking them to leave that spot and move 50 metres down the road? So, you know, to my way of thinking, if they're there for the 2 nights, they should be able to stay there unless there's a good reason for an exception. So one case in point is at Aiken Road at Sportsfield. So if it's on a Saturday morning, yes, I can understand if there's sports taking place, they should leave. But if there's no overriding sort of driving force, then I think they should be able to stay for the 2 days. It's interesting that Auckland City have introduced some new provisions regarding Freedom Camping, and they allow motorhomes to stay for 2 nights, but they have to leave on day 3 at 9 o'clock, and they're not allowed to return for at least 2 weeks. So I think that sort of provision makes a lot of sense to me, and I'd like to suggest the council consider something along those lines. So that's all from me, so happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of Ken?
No, that was pretty thorough. We got that message. Well done.
I just note in your submission you say, please clarify which barbecue area. It's pretty hard to work out from the plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, he suggested the one close to the surf club.
It was, but since then I've gone and visited it, and that's why, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, enjoy your lunch.
Turn up.
Yeah.
We're going to do these people?
Well,
Yeah, just take them all up.
Yeah.
Yes. You're more than welcome to come up. So this is David Whitford. And that is on page 1129.
Okay.
Sorry, what's this?
Welcome.
1129.
1129, yeah.
All right.
Ready to go?
Yep. Good.
Hi everyone, my name is David Whitford. Our family has owned a holiday at Cook's Beach, the boundaries of Kuranga Reserve for 37 years. We've always believed the reserve was for the public, for family picnics, games, etc., and for more recently for overflow parking. Recently, it has turned into a night camping ground during the busy season. They often arrive just on dark and many depart early. We regularly pick up rubbish, including toilet paper, and the residents have had enough. Often from our deck, when our deck goes over the reserve, we witness campers using the reserve for their ablutions, even though the toilet block is only 100 to 150 metres away. Why should this go on when there is suitable camping grounds available in the area? We pay to launch the boat. We cannot have a wine or beer at the picnic table down by the reserve without facing a fine. But these so-called privileged campers can within their zone on the reserve. All this needs to change. Let them pay their way like we all do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question? Thank you. Got the message? Well,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, all good? Very well. Well, will the town come up? So, 1:45. 4:45.